Staff Sergeant Madison Clark had ended 37 lives across 6 relentless years of service, and none of those targets ever knew she was there until it was too late. That was the essence of being a Guardian sniper, living unseen, striking from distances measured in kilometers, neutralizing danger before it could ever reach the people under your protection. Those she saved never heard her name, never glimpsed her face, never realized their safety or mission success often depended on someone buried in frozen mud or blistering sand, motionless, waiting for the perfect second to take an impossible shot. Madison preferred it that way. Solitude wasn't a burden. It was her element, and invisibility was a small price to pay for mastery. But that morning, deep in the Siberian borderlands, everything she thought she knew about Guardian missions was about to be rewritten. She'd been shadowing a Navy SEAL team for 4 days across the snow-swept wilderness, always between 800 meters and 2 kilometers away, providing silent overwatch as they tracked an arms trafficking network operating near the Russian-Mongolian frontier. The temperature hovered at -25 degrees Celsius, the kind of cold that would kill anyone careless in hours. But Madison had been raised in Alaska and had spent years turning extreme conditions into just another tactical factor, no different than calculating wind drift or range. Peering through her spotting scope, she observed the SEALs pause in a shallow valley for a map check and comms update. 4 disciplined operators moving with precision. Lieutenant Jake Hendress led the team. Senior Chief Devin Cole maintained perimeter security, while Petty Officers James Rivera and Tyler Bennett guarded the flanks. They were competent, efficient, and unaware of what was coming. Madison caught a flicker of movement along the ridge to the east, roughly 1,500 meters from the SEAL position. Adjusting her scope, she felt an icy dread in her gut that had nothing to do with the weather. Armed hostiles, at least 20, advancing in tactical formation, their movements sharp and coordinated, more like trained soldiers than local gunmen. They were setting up on high ground, with interlocking fields of fire aimed straight into the valley. This wasn't coincidence. It was a deliberate ambush, and the SEALs were seconds from walking into it. Madison keyed her encrypted radio, the secure channel linking her to both the SEAL element and the Tactical Operations Center. SEAL 1 Overwatch. Hostile force establishing ambush positions on the eastern ridgeline, bearing 085 from your location. I count 20 armed personnel with heavy weapons. Recommend immediate displacement. Hendress's reply came at once, steady but edged with tension. Overwatch, confirm hostile intent. Rules of engagement are in a gray area. Through her scope, Madison watched the enemy continue to take up tactical positions, machine guns being emplaced, an RPG team choosing firing points, and designated marksmen finding high hides, all movements that left no doubt about their purpose. SEAL 1. They're arranging an L-shaped ambush with your location as the kill zone, heavy machine guns in place, multiple RPG teams and at least 3 designated marksmen. This is a planned operation, not a chance meeting. You must move immediately. Before Lieutenant Alex Havoc Reed could reply, the first shot cracked across the valley, and Madison saw Rivera spin and drop as his leg collapsed beneath him. It wasn't a fatal hit, but it was enough to pin him and hold the team in place. The ambush had been triggered, and then chaos erupted. Machine gun fire swept the valley from multiple positions. RPGs streaked through the freezing air and slammed into rock and packed earth, and the SEALs scrambled for the scarce cover the terrain offered. Madison ran a tactical assessment in seconds. The enemy sat roughly 1,500 meters from the SEALs, while she was about 800 meters from them, putting her at around 2,000 meters from the ambush positions. Extreme distance under any circumstances, and made worse by gusting winds, temperature effects on ballistics, and an uphill angle that complicated the shot geometry. Math was math, and Madison had spent 6 years solving problems like these. So she moved from her spotting scope to the Mk13 Mod 7, her .300 Winchester Magnum that had been with her through 73 ops. The rifle rising into place by reflex as muscle memory from thousands of repetitions guided her. She acquired the primary threat, the machine gunner whose sustained fire kept the SEALs pinned, felt the gusty wind and compensated by instinct as much as calculation, found her natural respiratory pause where everything was still, and applied smooth, steady pressure until the Mk13 cracked. Through the scope, she watched the gunner jerk and vanish from his gun. First threat down. She cycled the bolt, picked out an RPG gunner readying a shot at what he thought was a helpless position, and the second round put him center mass so both man and launcher tumbled down the rock slope. SEAL 1. Overwatch engaging at extreme range. Primary machine gun and 1 RPG team neutralized. But you are still under fire from multiple positions. Can you move? She reported, voice tight. Havoc's reply came strained and clipped. Negative, Overwatch. Rivera is down with a leg wound, and we're taking sustained fire from at least 3 positions. We don't have a clear route out of this kill zone. Then his transmission was cut by another burst of machine gun fire, and through her scope, Madison could see the SEALs were in dire trouble with Rivera, unable to move without help. The rest of the team hunkered down behind inadequate cover, burning through rounds as they tried to suppress an enemy that held both the position and the numerical advantage. And Guardian Doctrine would normally have me stay put and keep sending precision fire from distance while calling for backup. The closest quick reaction element was a 45-minute helicopter ride away. Air support was grounded as weather deteriorated, and the SEALs didn't have 45 minutes. At best, they had 10 before the hostiles either overwhelmed them or cut them to pieces. So Madison made her choice instantly. She broke down her hide with practiced speed, slung the Mk13 across her back, and brought the M4 into her hands. The shorter weapon better suited for what she planned. Closed the gap and combined technical marksmanship with aggressive maneuver to hit the ambushers where they weren't expecting it. She keyed the secure channel one more time and said she was moving to their position, asked for 8 minutes to reach them, told them to keep their heads down and survive. After a stunned pause, Havoc's voice came back in disbelief because Guardian snipers are taught to hold separation and engage at range. But the rulebook had just been rendered useless. The team was about to be overrun, and she was the only nearby asset capable of changing that calculus. So she was moving now. Madison advanced through the Siberian wasteland with controlled ferocity, covering 800 meters of snow, rocks and frozen streams in 7 minutes where normal movement would take 20 to 30, using every draw and ridgeline for concealment and staying in dead ground so the enemy couldn't spot her approach. The cold was brutal, -25 and falling, but adrenaline kept her hot and focused. The M4 was ready, mags staged for instant reload, grenades primed. At 300 meters out, she could see the ambush layout in full. 3 primary firing positions forming an L around the valley, with additional fighters handling security and resupply. A professional setup that screamed military training. They'd made a fatal oversight. All eyes were on the valley, and no one was watching the approaches from the northwest, because who in their right mind would expect an attack on a 20-man force in midwinter from that direction? Madison was that sort of crazy, and she was about to teach them why that blind spot mattered. She closed on their rear security, 2 fighters whose job was to stop exactly this sort of move. But they were cold and tired, and more focused on warmth than vigilance. Both went down to suppressed bursts before they even twigged to someone behind them. Moving past their bodies, she picked up the next target, a machine gun 20 meters ahead, with 3 fighters manning it and keeping the SEALs pinned. She closed to 15 meters and engaged, delivering controlled pairs to center mass that put all 3 down and silenced the gun. Confusion spread through the enemy ranks as fighters tried to figure out why their supporting fire had stopped, and several moved toward the silenced position, a decision Madison punished from behind cover with the M4, mechanical and exact. 4 more fighters down before the rest realized they were being attacked from the rear. The ambush collapsed into chaotic fragments as the enemy scrambled to respond, but now Madison was exposed and taking return fire. Rounds cracked past her head and sparked on rock, forcing her to shift laterally, using smoke and terrain to relocate before concentrated fire could bracket her. Then Hendriss's voice came over the radio, raw but working, identifying themselves as SEAL 1. Identify yourself and your position. You're disrupting enemy fire, but we can't support you if we don't know where you are. Madison keyed the radio while reloading. SEAL 1, this is Overwatch, roughly 200 meters northwest of your location, engaging the hostile element from the rear. I've knocked out their primary machine gun and reduced their effective strength by about 1/3, but I'm taking fire from multiple bearings. There was a short pause before Havoc's voice returned, a mix of disbelief and relief. Overwatch? You're the Guardian sniper. I thought you always worked from distance. Normally I do, Madison replied calmly. Today I'm improvising. Can you lay suppressive fire on bearing 320 from your position? Enemy fighters are regrouping there and I could use support. Copy that. Stand by for support fire, Havoc answered. The SEALs opened disciplined, precise fire at the locations Madison had called out, forcing the ambushers to seek cover and disrupting their ability to coordinate. And with that pressure easing, she shifted positions to gain better angles on the remaining threats. She methodically cleared the rest of the fighters, an RPG gunner trying to relocate, 2 riflemen attempting to flank the SEAL element, another machine gunner moving to a new post. Each engagement was short and lethal. Identify the threat, engage with controlled fire, confirm the hit, and move before return fire could zero her in. The enemy began to collapse under pressure from 2 directions. What had been a professional ambush unraveled into a desperate struggle for survival. Some fighters tried to withdraw but moved across ground. Madison could see clearly, so she switched back to the MK-13 for long-range shots and reminded them that distance offered no sanctuary from someone with her skills. After 20 minutes of sustained combat, the valley fell quiet except for wind howling across the Siberian plain. The hostile force had been neutralized or pushed off. Madison ran a thorough scan to ensure no immediate threats remained, then keyed the radio. SEAL 1, Overwatch. Hostile force neutralized or dispersed. Your position is secure. I'm moving in to assist with casualty treatment. She advanced carefully, announcing her approach and waiting for confirmation before revealing herself. When she finally stepped from behind the rocks, the 4 SEALs stared, trying to reconcile conflicting impressions. Madison peeled back her white winter hood to show a face marked by 6 years in unforgiving environments. Auburn hair braided tight, gray-green eyes that missed nothing, a small scar above her left brow from an operation in Syria. She went straight to Rivera, who was propped against a rock with a bleeding but bandaged leg, knelt and pulled a trauma kit. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency as she checked the dressing, verified the round had passed through muscle without hitting bone or major vessels, gave pain meds, and secured a better field dressing. Rivera watched with a dazed mix of pain and curiosity and asked, "Ma'am, who exactly are you?" "Staff Sergeant Madison Clark, Guardian Sniper Program," she answered plainly. "I've been providing overwatch for your operation for the past 4 days." Hendris, Havoc, who had been scanning for threats while Cole provided security, turned toward her. 4 days? We were operating independently. No Guardian support was in our brief. "That's how Guardian operations work," Madison said. "You don't know we're there. We shadow special ops teams at distance, eliminate threats before they develop, provide early warning of enemy movement, and let you focus on mission objectives without worrying about security beyond your immediate perimeter." Madison finished treating Rivera and stood. Usually, Guardian teams maintain complete separation and remain unknown. This mission was different. Cole, a veteran with decades of experience, spoke up. "Ma'am, I've worked with Overwatch snipers from every service." That wasn't Overwatch. That was direct action at close quarters against a numerically superior force. "How many did you engage personally?" he asked. 16 confirmed, possibly 3 more I couldn't verify in the chaos," Madison replied flatly, neither bragging nor apologizing. The tactical situation had forced a deviation from standard Guardian doctrine. Bennett, the youngest at 26, couldn't help blurting, "You tracked us for 4 days and we never knew you were there. That's our job." Madison shrugged. "Guardian snipers operate alone, maintain perfect concealment, and neutralize threats before teams realize they're endangered. Odds are you've had Guardian Overwatch on prior ops without ever knowing." Before they could continue, the weather announced itself. The wind that had been cold turned savage. Gusts strong enough to shove people sideways. Temperature dropping. The sky taking on the dark, heavy look seasoned operators recognize as a major incoming system. Madison felt the change in wind patterns with instincts honed over years and stated, "We need shelter now. A major storm is moving in, likely within 30 minutes. Staying in this valley will be fatal." Havoc trusted her judgment without question. Anyone who could do what she'd done earned credibility. Recommendation: cave system approximately 2 kilometers north. I scouted it during reconnaissance 2 days ago. It'll give us cover from the wind and cold, keep us hidden from any overhead scans, and offer defensible ground if we have to hold out. Rivera can move. Madison nodded, confirming with calm precision. "The wound will hurt, but it won't stop him. I've given painkillers and the bleeding's under control. Rotate his gear to lighten the load. He can walk with a shoulder to lean on." They started moving instantly. Madison leading because she knew the terrain and the cave route better than anyone. Cole steadied Rivera, who limped forward with teeth clenched, refusing to slow the team. Havoc and Bennett kept overwatch, scanning constantly for any enemy survivors regrouping in the storm. Within minutes, the weather turned savage. The landscape swallowed by a whiteout so complete visibility dropped below 20 meters. The temperature plummeting to -30 as wind screamed across the ridges, hard enough to knock a man down. Still, Madison pressed on, navigating through the blizzard by GPS and pure memory, leading them through a world of ice and noise that would have disoriented anyone else. They reached the caves just as the storm hit its peak fury, small but deep enough into the mountain to block the wind and hold heat. Madison guided them to the most defensible spot, a chamber 15 meters in with a narrow entrance, easy to secure and warm enough to survive the night. Once inside, as they set a perimeter and tried to thaw fingers and minds, questions came fast about Madison and the Guardian program. She answered within what her clearance allowed, describing the selection, the training, and the mental conditioning required for solitary, long-duration operations. "How long you been doing this?" Rivera asked, his voice looser from pain meds. 6 years, Madison replied. 73 operations. Most go to plan. I stay at distance, eliminate threats. No one ever knows I was there. What happened today was an exception. Exception how? Havoc asked. That ambush was military grade, not local militia. They knew you were coming and prepped accordingly. From 2,000 meters, I wouldn't have made a difference. You'd have been wiped before I could react. So I closed the distance and went direct. You've done that before? Going from Overwatch to close combat? She paused a beat. Once in Syria 3 years ago, a Delta team walked into a complex ambush. Standard protocols couldn't fix it, so I moved within 50 meters and hit the enemy flank while Delta fought forward. We took down 37 hostiles. No friendly losses. Cole whistled low. Never read that in any sniper doctrine. It's not, Madison replied. Doctrine doesn't win fights. Adaptation does. Guardians are trained for precision, but we also train for close combat. Sometimes protecting the team means being in the fight beside them. Outside, the storm howled like a living thing for 6 straight hours, the temperature dropping to levels that would kill anyone exposed in minutes. The team rotated watch, shared rations, and kept body heat alive, grateful to be merely uncomfortable instead of dead. As night approached and the storm began to ease, Havoc sat beside Madison during her rest shift. Clark, I've got to ask. You saved us. From an ambush, from the storm, from everything. Why do you do this? Alone for days, no credit, no name, no recognition. Madison was silent, watching the snow swirl at the cave mouth before finally speaking. My father was a Marine officer in Iraq in 2004 during some of the worst fighting. Smart, tactical, cared for his Marines. One day his patrol got ambushed. The sniper they never saw killed him, and 3 others before they could react. She paused, voice steady but distant. I was 16, spent years furious, at the war, the enemy, the world for taking him. It will shield us from wind and cold, hide us from observation, and give defensible positions if we have to hold. Rivera can move, Madison confirmed. The leg will hurt, but it won't stop him. I've given pain meds and packed the bleeding, rotate his gear to ease his load, and he can walk with help. They moved at once with Madison leading because she knew the terrain and the route to the cave system. Cole supporting Rivera, who pushed on through the pain, Havoc and Bennett covering rear and flanks, and constantly scanning for any remnants of the enemy. The storm hit before they reached the caves and turned the world into a whiteout within minutes. Visibility fell under 20 meters. Temperature plunged toward -30, and wind screamed across the ridges hard enough to make staying upright a fight. Madison kept them moving, navigating by GPS and hard-earned terrain memory through conditions that would have left most people hopelessly lost. And they reached the caves as the blizzard reached full fury. The caves were small, but dug deep enough to block the wind and hold heat. She led them to the best chamber, about 15 meters in with a narrow, defensible entrance and thermal properties that would trap body heat. And as they set security and tried to warm up the SEALs, pressed her with questions about the Guardian program. Within classification limits, she explained selection, training, and the psychological conditioning that lets someone operate alone for long stretches. When Rivera, looser from meds, asked how long she'd been doing it, she answered, 6 years, 73 operations. Most go to plan. Maintain distance, remove threats, and let teams finish missions unaware. What happened today was an exception, she said. The ambush bore the hallmarks of trained military professionals rather than local militants. They had anticipated a SEAL approach, and standard overwatch from 2 kilometers wouldn't have altered the outcome, so she closed and engaged directly. When asked if she'd ever shifted from overwatch to close action, she admitted one operation in Syria 3 years prior, where a Delta unit walked into a complex ambush. Doctrine failed to fix the problem, so she moved to 50 meters, struck the flank while Delta fought through, and together they neutralized 37 hostiles with no friendly losses. Cole whistled low. No textbook covers that because doctrine doesn't account for every circumstance. Adaptation does. Guardians train for precision, but also rehearse close quarters because sometimes the only way to save a team is to be in the fight with them. The storm howled outside for 6 hours, temperatures falling to lethal levels if anyone stayed exposed, and the team rotated watches, shared rations, and kept heat by body and breath, far better than dying in the valley. As evening waned and the storm eased, Havoc sat beside Madison on her rest and asked why she did this work. Why the solitary missions, no credit, no name? Madison watched snow eddy at the cave mouth before answering. Her father, a Marine officer in Iraq in 2004, led a patrol that walked into an ambush. The unseen sniper killed him and 3 Marines before they could respond, and she was 16 when it happened. Spent years furious at war and the world. And when she later joined the Army and made sniper school, she chose to be the person who prevents other kids from losing parents to enemies they never saw coming. An invisible guardian who removes threats before they reach people doing their jobs. Her father might have been proud or thought her crazy for lying in frozen mud to make impossible shots. But it wasn't about his opinion. It was about making sure other 16-year-olds didn't lose their parents. And she kept doing it. The storm finally broke around 2100, leaving fresh snow that was at last passable, and the team prepared to travel 23 kilometers to extraction through terrain that would have been hard even without an injured member. Madison moved with them, slipping back into Overwatch, but now within direct comms and sight rather than kilometers away, rotating point and rear security, picking routes by terrain, reading and spotting threats before the team ran into them, and they covered ground steadily through the night, despite the brutal conditions. She spotted 2 enemy patrols on the route and vectored the SEALs around one completely. The second couldn't be avoided, so she engaged and eliminated the 3-man observation post from 600 meters with 3 precise rounds the main element never heard. The Blackhawks arrived on schedule at 0630, fast and low into a valley that gave some cover. The SEALs loaded with practiced speed and maintained security until they lifted, and Madison was last aboard, taking her usual spot at the door to watch until they were clear. As the helicopters climbed away from the Siberian wild, she felt relief mixed with that hollow melancholy that follows long solo operations. And Havoc slid over to her once they were safely airborne and told her he would file an after-action report, including a full account of her actions, because what she did deserved recognition. Madison shook her head immediately. If you put Guardian details and my actions into a report, you'll compromise me and the whole program. Operational security is the backbone of our effectiveness, and documenting Guardian direct action tells every hostile force to look for us and makes future ops far more dangerous. So what goes in the report? Havoc asked. Write that your element encountered a prepared ambush of about 20 with heavy weapons, that you defended the position, degraded the hostile force through superior tactics and firepower, displaced to shelter during deteriorating weather, and were extracted with 1 minor casualty. That's true. Enough to satisfy reporting while preserving classified program security. Her tone softened. 16 hostile fighters won't threaten American forces again, and 4 SEALs get to go back to their families. That's the recognition that matters. The formal debrief 3 days later in Germany put her across a table from Colonel Rachel Foster, commander of the Special Operations Task Force overseeing Guardian operations, and a civilian, David Reynolds, who represented the organization that ran the Guardian program. They opened by noting that Lieutenant Havock's after-action contained no specific mention of her involvement, despite his team's full awareness of what occurred, and Reynolds leaned forward to discuss the actual events in Siberia, while Madison listened as they reviewed classified operation reports and program documentation. You abandoned standard protocols and closed to contact, choosing direct close-quarters engagement against a numerically superior force because the tactical picture demanded it. Long-range overwatch and strict separation wouldn't have stopped the ambush and would have allowed the SEAL element to be overrun. So you assessed the geometry and decided the only viable option to prevent American casualties was to close and strike the hostile force from their flank. The colonel acknowledged the decision as correct, but the issue before the panel was whether this constituted a pattern, since this was the second time you'd transitioned from traditional Guardian overwatch to direct action engagement. The first occurring in Syria 3 years earlier under similar circumstances. Both incidents involved professionally trained ambushers where extreme range engagement could not protect the teams you were assigned to guard. And thus you had effectively established a precedent that when conditions warrant, you will abandon strict Guardian separation and engage directly at close quarters. Reynolds listened without visible judgment, as you stated plainly that you adapt tactics to the situation and to the capabilities you bring to the fight. Because your primary mission is protecting American forces, and the methods you choose depend entirely on what the tactical environment requires. Foster and Reynolds exchanged a look that suggested prior discussion. Then Foster made clear they were not seeking to punish you. The lives saved and the hostile force eliminated were precisely what the Guardian program existed to accomplish. Yet they also had to address the programmatic implications of your adaptations. Reynolds proposed a new position within the program for advanced Guardian operators, snipers formally trained and authorized to transition between long-range overwatch and direct action engagement, as the situation dictates. And they asked you to become the inaugural operator in that role. Immediately promoted to Sergeant First Class and assigned as lead instructor for the Guardian Sniper Training Program. You accepted the promotion and assignment with quiet agreement, preferring the field, but recognizing that your 6 years and 73 operations created a responsibility to pass on lessons learned to the next generation who would protect American warriors from the shadows. Over the following months, you trained a dozen new Guardian snipers in advanced concepts, precision marksmanship and extreme range engagement. Yes, but also close quarters tactics, aggressive movement, and the cognitive flexibility to recognize when doctrine must bend to save lives. Equipment loadouts and training syllabi were revised to support a dual-mode operator, and protocols were codified for when and how Guardians should transition from overwatch to direct action. 3 years after the Siberian operation, Commander Havoc, now in a larger command, found his team pinned in northern Canada when a familiar transmission came over the net. SEAL Actual Overwatch. Eyes on your position. 22 personnel with crew-served weapons setting an L-shaped ambush. Recommend displacement to bearing 270. I will provide covering fire during movement. Havoc suppressed a smile despite the situation and replied, "Copy that, Overwatch. Moving on your mark. Whoever you are, thanks for being there." He never learned whether it was you or one of the operators you'd trained that day. The voice was deliberately neutral, and the call sign generic to preserve the operational security that makes Guardian operations effective. His team displaced under precision, covering fire that removed threats at distances they couldn't visualize. And he knew somewhere out there a Guardian watched. You continued operational work for 7 more years, building a record that, by the time you finally stepped back from constant deployment, totaled 198 confirmed kills across 86 Guardian operations. She trained 37 advanced Guardian operators who went on to shield special operations teams across 6 combat zones. She never sought recognition, never appeared in the media, and never allowed her face in official photographs. Her entire record remained buried under classification so deep most of the world would never know Guardian snipers existed. Yet in a handful of secured briefing rooms, senior officers knew of the program and of the rare operators who could shift effortlessly between long-range precision and close-quarters battle depending on what the fight required. They knew about the day in Siberia when a Guardian sniper named Madison Clark broke every protocol, charged into an ambush, and saved 4 Americans through a mix of impossible marksmanship and fearless aggression. They knew, and though they could never speak it aloud, they were grateful. Years later, while instructing a new class of Guardian candidates, Madison was asked what kept her steady through isolation, danger, and the crushing solitude of carrying other people's survival alone in hostile territory. Her answer never changed. Her father died because a sniper he never saw ended his life from an unseen perch, and she had spent her career making sure that never happened to other families. Whether striking from 2 kilometers away or fighting face-to-face didn't matter. What mattered was that American warriors made it home to their families. That had always been her mission, and it was the only mission that ever mattered. The Guardian Sniper program continued to grow, merging its long-range Overwatch roots with advanced Guardian protocols that taught tactical adaptability. Training deepened, gear improved, selection hardened, but one principle remained unshakable. American warriors deserved unseen protection from threats they couldn't detect, and Guardians delivered that protection, whether from impossible distance or within the fight itself. The wolf never announces itself to the sheep. It simply acts when danger comes. Sometimes it watches from the hills. Sometimes it walks through the storm, rifle in hand. Sometimes it stands shoulder to shoulder with those it guards, adapting as needed to ensure the flock survives. In the end, only the work matters. Not fame, not medals, not public credit, just the quiet knowledge that somewhere out there, soldiers are coming home alive because someone was watching from the shadows, taking impossible shots and greater risks so others wouldn't have to. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more incredible stories on Captain Joe's Stories.